Welcome back to Rip It Up, Start Again, and Happy New Year 2019. So Rip It Up, Start Again is the stage, it's the show, and it's the community building of disruptors. We identify disruptors that are out there that are identifying real needs, real consumer needs, and answering real problems for today. We're obviously in the world of technology where everything changes, everything builds, everything expands, but disruptors are very agile of mind. All those that I have met have been agile of mind. They understand the insights. They understand where consumers are having problems, and they're delivering through tech. And this is the future. So I'm building a community of disruptors, and I'm hoping that this shift and this understanding will actually accelerate innovation success from the paltry 4%, which it is at the moment, up in advance of 64%. I know of companies that achieve that, but it's certainly not worldwide at the moment. So exciting times. Let's see what happens for the rest of the year. Stay tuning in. Our poll on the website, please come to it. Citizen Me is still in pole position, closely followed by, oh gosh, I've completely forgotten who's there at the moment. But anyway, go to our website and vote for who you want to be chairing Rip It Up in June, in our episode in June. So the first speaker I have today is Annette from More Than Carrots.
Thanks, Lulu, and hello, I'm Annette from More Than Carrots. We help diners find restaurants with most plant-based variety. I want to start by telling you a little bit how I got here. It was about 3-4 years ago, and I can really pinpoint the moment when I had this realization. I was talking to a colleague of mine. We were going for lunch. He had been vegetarian for several years, and I asked him why. For me, the main reason was ethical, that's the one I knew. And he said that it's because of his carbon footprint, that he really was vegetarian for that reason. And for me, that was a big realization, or actually quite a shock, because I was, to be completely honest, quite embarrassed. I had never even thought about meat in the context of my carbon footprint. And I did consider myself to be quite environmentally conscious. I was working for a sustainability-focused startup. I was trying to adjust my behavior. I thought I knew a lot about this. And this definitely made me look it up. And what happened is I realized that animal agriculture is responsible for about 15% of our global greenhouse gas emissions. That is more than the global transportation sector. And what I also realized when I thought about it a bit is that I eat meat practically every day, and that scaling that back to roughly half would be quite easy. It's something that would have, if everyone did that, a massive impact, because imagine if we talk 15%, if we, especially in the developed world, cut our consumption by half or 2/3, we're talking of slashing 10% of our global greenhouse gas emissions. Imagine having to take half of all of our planes and cars and boats and trains of this planet to achieve the same, and that sounds impossible. So I realized this is it. Like, I got to do this, and I'm sure the whole world is into this as soon as they realize. So what happened next is I tried this on my own, and I went out to continue with my social life, and I realized pretty quickly that this was actually mainly a social problem for me. It wasn't about my dietary needs. It wasn't really so much about craving meat or taste. It was about being at a restaurant and going with my friends, who were all meat eaters at the time. I was sort of within my social circle, one of the earlier people to think about this. And we ended up at restaurants where I was constantly in this dilemma, where if I wanted to be with my friends and I wanted to enjoy my food, I had to eat meat, because the alternative was to eat mushroom risotto like 5 times a week. And I mean, as nice as that dish is, how often can you realistically eat it? And I wanted to keep my friends. I wanted to, enjoy my food and not eat meat all the time. So I was in this dilemma. And the statistics also backed me up, because more than 30% of the population in the UK at that time, this is 3 years ago, already said that they wanted to eat less meat. And our meat consumption is stable. It actually still is. So clearly there is a problem here, and this begs for disruption. So at this time, my co-founder, Charlotte, joined me, and we started building an app. And we wanted to do something that I had actually seen before, but that didn't seem to catch on. We were looking at building an app that helps anyone find the restaurants where you will have a great experience ordering veggie and enjoy the vegetarian food. And what we wanted to do is essentially make a list of all the restaurants in London to start where this is great. And ideally base it on reviews and have this tool where any restaurant you find will will be a good experience for you. But what we then came to realize is that actually any restaurant in London, or almost every restaurant, will give someone a great veggie experience. Like, they all have at least one dish, and someone is going to like it. And so if we base this on reviews, if we make this about a list of restaurants that are good at it, we'll end up with a tool there. It's really hard to make that cut. Like, it just didn't add up. Like, this whole thing didn't work. And so we ripped it up. We decided we got to do something completely different. And what we did as a result of that, which is excitingly what we're actually launching this week, it's a brand new iPhone app. We've been working on this for a year now. We had to ultimately define almost like, what does it mean if a restaurant is not great at veggie? And we built a scoring framework that allowed us to say, if we were to take every single restaurant in London and include it in our app, for this to be useful, you would have to essentially have a scoring system that helps you rank all these restaurants by like which are best, which are still good, which are not so good, and which are actually really not that great at all, or pretty bad. And so we developed a scoring system that allowed us to do that. And we considered a number of factors. This really evolves around like 3 pillars. Like, one is, how many dishes are there and what kind of variety are you going to find? We've tried in the beginning to give people exactly the dishes that were there, but they change quite often, and it's really almost impossible to keep that up to date. If you go to a restaurant for a dish, you want that dish to be there, and if it's not, you would get quite upset. So what we figured is we just need to tell you how many dishes there are, because if you know that there are 4 or 5, you know that there will be choice. And if we also tell you that they are of different sort of kinds, like you don't have to choose whether you want no carbs or no meat. Like, you know that there will be like a heavier or a more filling dish, a lighter dish, and sort of variation. So that was our first thing, like to know that you'll have choice. The second bit is to know whether the restaurant focuses on this at all. We are doing this as menu analysis to be able to scale. We have about 1,500 restaurants on our app at the moment, so we cannot test them all personally. But what we can do is we can look at like whether restaurants focus on veggie food. And there is a number of different ways that you can tell. One of the easiest ones is to just look at the percentage of the menu that is veggie. And if there's a high percentage, then they will be good at this. They will be creative, and the stuff will be tasty, because otherwise they would go out of business. So that's like sort of the second pillar. And then the last one is the one that I originally cared most about, and that brings me sort of back to the start, is the social element. Because at the moment, I still eat meat occasionally. And for me, it is still horrible to sit in a restaurant and raise my hand and say, I would like the vegan menu, please. I don't do that. And so if those dishes exist and are amazing, but are on a separate menu that I would have to ask for, I'm not going to see them, I'm not going to order them. And so we also consider the social element of how easy is it to order veggie or vegan, and do you actually have to ask and go out of your way? Now, this is like what we've built. As I said, we're launching the app this week. It's super exciting times for us. You can check it out on morethancarrots.co.uk. It's our website that explains it all. Or in the App Store, just More Than Carrots. That's us. And I hope that a lot of you are going to find this useful. And with that, I'll close and hand over to Margaret, the next speaker. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Annette. So I'm Margaret Briffa. I'm founding partner of a law firm, Briffa Legal, and it specialises in the creative industries. So we help businesses like Annette's to make sure that they're protecting their rights and their ingenuity, and that they can get the value of that. So let me tell you a little bit about how I got here and how I ripped it up and started again. Because I work in a very traditional sector, the law, and I was working for a very big law firm, looking after clients who really knew very well how to protect themselves, big brands. And my day was spent sending out letters telling small creative businesses what they couldn't do, and getting them to, change their plans. Because the name of the game in intellectual property is to make sure that competitors keep well away from you. And what I observed sitting up there in this great glass building was that the businesses that were getting these letters didn't really have anywhere to go to get advice. They couldn't afford to go to big law firms who had the specialist knowledge. And even if they did, those firms couldn't really deal with a small business. On the other hand, they couldn't go to the high street firm because they didn't really have the knowledge. So a lot of them were just, you know, giving up. So I thought, well, what if I set up something that specifically caters to their needs? And there are two things I thought was really important. The first one is to help them understand the whole regime. So a traditional way of working would be just to, someone would ask you to do something and you'd do it, but you wouldn't really invest in them and transfer your knowledge, because the idea of demystifying the law is not something that people do. But the first thing is, we thought that is what I really want to do. I want to teach them how to be like the big boys. Often people would come because they've had a problem, but once you're working with someone, it's very easy to start helping them, protecting what they're doing, dealing in the right way with it commercially, and then it comes to them being infringed, and then they have to do something about it. So passing on the knowledge and helping them build up was very important, and that's not something that's commonly done. The second thing is that the traditional way of hiring a lawyer is by the hour, and that doesn't really work for small businesses or people in general, because you don't know how long we're going to take to do something, and there's no incentive for us to go quickly. So we have a very transparent fixed fee system, and the first thing is we find out exactly what it is that you need to know. We invest in getting to know you. We don't charge for any of that. And then once we know what you need, we can then advise you of options, as I say, at all times, working collaboratively with you. In terms of tech, that's going to be really interesting, because things are changing massively for us with the advent of artificial intelligence, because as of today, it's more common for a person to be writing books, creating things, making things. But if it's artificial intelligence that's going to do this in the future, then we need to think, well, who owns those rights and how do we deal with that? So exciting times for us. Thank you very much. I think I've said enough for the time being, and I'm going to hand over to Louise.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Louise, and I'm the CEO and founder of PlanSnap. We help people meet in real life really, really quickly. My background is actually as a strategic marketer, working for the BBC, ASOS, Yo Sushi by day. But by night, I was a super planner. Every friendship group has this person who is pulling the group together, booking tickets and tables, working out when we're next going to meet, sending the postcode at the last minute, the person who takes on all of that emotional work of maintaining your friendships. I was that person, and I was actually organising a camping and wakeboarding trip for 30 friends. You probably had a sinking feeling in your stomach as I said that, because you know exactly what happened next. I used doodle polls, Google spreadsheets, Facebook events, WhatsApp groups, text messages, emails, hassling people in person, all to just get the group to agree on the details of the plan so we could actually go. At that point, I realised this was not the future of technology. I think that when you look at technologies like two-tap apps for cars and hotels and films, we've got these incredible technologies that we can use, but they're not for the things that actually make us happy in life. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to take the user experience and the intelligence that we know exists and take it to transforming the way that we think about our fundamental relationships. PlanSnap is a platform that gets people to meet in real life really, really quickly. We use a combination of group psychology, machine learning, and clean design to get people to agree on the details of the plan. Those details are actually really simple: who, what, where, and when. And if you can get people to agree on that, you can do anything. It's the reason I'm so passionate about this mission. We live in a time where technology is actually dividing us, our societies and our relationships. There's now a causal link between social media use and loneliness. How can it be that we're more connected than ever, but lonely at the same time? So this is what we do. That is my introduction for now, and thank you very much, and I'd like to welcome back Lulu.
Thanks, Louise. That's great. Who, what, where, when. Sounds like the core of life. It's really interesting, actually, just on that point, because obviously I'm talking a lot about humans and AI. What's the difference? And if we make really clear lines, we can work together really, really well to be much more effective. And I think we'll talk more in the Q&A panel later, where I'll dive in with Louise and the stats on how much time is wasted because we haven't really understood where humans are most creative and AI is most effective. So that's an interesting topic. So thank you for that, Louise. And thank you to my other disruptive speakers. It's really cool. We will be coming back after the short break, having the Q&A panel, and look forward to hearing much more about their businesses.
I think we're tired of doing things that are unrewarding to the human.
If there's a genuine problem and you provide a genuine solution, it doesn't require so much like driving it down people's throats, which requires capital for sales and marketing. It's just there's a problem and all of a sudden it's a solution, and sales is just organic.
Disruption really starts at the root way that we interact with something to make it easier, more efficient, and more rewarding.
What we're seeing here is it doesn't matter what category you're in. The same problems are occurring or the same opportunities are occurring.
Because big corporations are just stuck in their own ways, doing things the way that they've always done because no one's challenged that. And all of a sudden, we want to buy brands from companies that we care about that are doing better for the world, that have a better social footprint, that have a better impact on the way that we feel.
So they will be called disruptive companies because they bother the big ones. But I don't think they necessarily are disruptive in terms of their way of working on the day-to-day. They are basically trying to shape a new form of economy that just works for people.
I think we're all looking for ways to minimize our noise so that the things that we do choose to engage with, we want them to be more meaningful.
Every company has a story. Your brand is real from the inside out. If you get that very clear and you're very honest with your story, what happens is the development and the birth of that company evolves in a very real way.
I think the Rip It Up community is united by a dissatisfaction with the status quo.
People are tired of seeing that business is something extractive and it doesn't create the value for people that they expect.
Just generally being unsatisfied with the status quo, thinking that there's got to be a better way, you know. I think that's what unites all of us.
Companies come to Rip It Up because they see that it's part of a whole community, a movement, where people have got this tension, if you like, of wanting to change, wanting to effect a change and to share that change.
There's marketing, there's PR, there's engineers, there's biologists, there are video gamers. They are completely widespread and do so many different things. But all those skills become an asset pool to everyone that goes through that system. So it's sort of like you have a nice little resource that you can tap at any time and say, hey, I need this. And then hopefully that community can answer. And if that community can't, they have obviously their own communities that they can reach out to as well.
I want people to come to me and say, I've got a business proposition and I want to share it on your stage. I want to be part of this movement, if you like. I want people to come to me and say, I'm not quite ready, but I get what you're doing. Can you help me?
And I just love that that sort of idea that things can be better, you know, fundamentally, whether it's the people who are talking on stage or the people in the audience, just generally being unsatisfied with the status quo, thinking that there's got to be a better way, you know. I think that's what unites all of us.
I want everybody. I want, building civilizational wealth for me is the end goal. It's the big picture. It's the big, can I achieve a little bit of that? I would love to. I'm sure just little old me won't, but if I can start people, an avalanche starts in a very small way.
Welcome back to Rip It Up, Start Again, the second half Q&A panel, where we have all our disruptors chatting through and answering the 5 questions that I put to them. I'm going to start with the first question. What is the big problem that you've solved? Obviously, a little bit has been answered, but what's the big problem that you're solving, Louise?
So the big problem that we're solving is the epidemic of loneliness. I think that we live in a world where technology is connecting us more than ever before, yeah, actually, people feel really, really lonely. The UK has recently appointed a Minister for Loneliness to continue the work of Jo Cox and the Loneliness Commission. And there are lots of different studies that actually have a causal link now between social media use and loneliness. And it just seems utterly ridiculous, you know, that this technology that was designed to bring us closer together, and in some senses does for perhaps people that can't meet in real life, but it makes us mistake superficial connections for the real world depth of relationships that we really, really need. And that has a huge health impact. Loneliness is as bad for you as smoking, which is a study by the World Health Organization. And it just feels, you know, crazy that that's the world that we live in. So the big problem is definitely the epidemic of loneliness and making a happy and healthy society through real world relationships. But I think if you break that back down to something a bit more immediate, who here hasn't tried to get friends together for a dinner, for example, and gone through absolute hell to get everyone to agree on the details of the plan? The average plan, we did some research, and the average plan takes 9 apps, 22 app switches, 77 swipes, 13 minutes on the phone, 10 texts, and it still fails 40% of the time. And that's the problem that we want to solve most immediately.
That's a really, really high figure. Come again with those stats, because I just want to hear you say it one more time.
9 apps. I get it wrong now. 9 apps, 22 app switches, 77 swipes, 13 minutes on the phone, 10 texts, half an hour on average, and fails 40% of the time.
That's amazing. It's such a high percentage.
I have one thing to add there, actually, because we did a survey last summer. We obviously look at specifically how people select restaurants, and I think the on average people that are looking at their meat consumption to spend 14 minutes browsing through menus to select a restaurant. And it's what we've seen, which I thought was really interesting, and I said that before. Like, for me, this was all partly a social problem, is that the whole way that our dietary requirements culture is evolving. It's very focused on the individual, and you try to find sort of this perfect dish that has exactly the calories, exactly the ingredients, exactly the excluded ingredients, everything you want, but it doesn't make for a very social experience. Sorry, and we have. We found that people want to eat together, and that we want to enable that.
Despite the fact that we've got rising inflation and stagnating wages, people are now spending more money on eating out, typically because they don't have their own spaces to socialise in anymore, in the same way that previous generations might have done. So eating out is on the up. But there are so many synergies, because the more I use awkward in the not the correct sense, the more awkward the dietary requirement in a social group, the more likely that person is to lead where that group goes. So I think we should be working together.
And so what that also means is that I would always say the big problem we're solving is climate change. But again, for the individual, it comes down to much more mundane sort of problems, which is like, how do I find a restaurant where I can have a great plant-based meal, but my friends can eat meat, and everyone will be happy. And if you don't find that kind of restaurant, then either as a meat reducer like I am, you end up eating meat. And I think that like making this logistically easier is one of the ways that we can really enable change to happen here. So it's loneliness and climate change. So we're really, adding up on.
It's really. Point Today Newsday reported on Radio 2 this morning. They had Dr. Sheila, can't remember her surname, talking about a group. She's one of 30 scientists that have been studying how are we going to feed the world. Currently, there's what's the figure? 10 trillion, or what's the figure of people in the population?
We're going towards 10 billion.
10 billion, right? And they were basically saying we need to cut down by 50% meat and sugar, which is really interesting.
Well, and actually, the meat number is a global number, and for the UK, that means more like 90%.
Yeah, because Western civilization eat more.
Yeah, because there are a lot of countries that don't even eat much meat yet, and they're getting there. And it's almost like, I think, I always look at it in the way that we have both, we have a double effect by changing our own behavior. One is the way actually reducing the consumption, but the other bit is also that if we keep doing this, other countries will want the same.
Yeah.
And I think to get this global understanding that this has to change, we have to stop. We have to lead. We led in increasing it. We have to also lead in decreasing it.
It's a big education. It's a bit similar to the Chinese palate has moved into dairy where they never were before. Yeah. Is that good? Is that bad? Who knows? But the point is the education, if we can make this educational point with regards to global and how we're feeding the rest of the world, if we can solve this big problem, you're right on the cusp of it. This is really good timing from your perspective. then let's all move together and use again technology to enable us to make our plans that doesn't become dysfunctional because one person on in that plan of 4 or whatever has a particular liking to a food. Make it as an opportunity to choose something different or an opportunity to choose something same. It doesn't really matter, does it? But that's the point. So can we move to Margaret? What big problem are you solving?
Well, this is all, it's really worthy, the climate change and the loneliness. And so our business works with businesses like yours. And the problem that we're solving is, how do you find out, how you access the information so you protect your business and can build it on a safe platform, not a tech safe platform, on a legally safe platform. So at the end of the day, you're investing all your time and effort in it, and it's actually worth something. You can pass that on, you can bring in people, you can scale it up, because you know that you've created the space to do that, and other people can't come in and jump on it and do something very, very similar. So the problem we're solving is making that very easily accessible to small businesses, and saying, do it now. I mean, really do it before you've even gone any further, because you need to know now. A lot of people think, oh, that legal stuff, I'll park it because it's going to be really complicated and expensive. And then they go quite a long way down and then hit a problem that they could have headed off. So we're working with people by telling them, educating them, giving a plan up front that they can follow. So we're empowering them, really. They're helping them seize control. I mean, that's all really sort of weird for lawyers. It's like, we don't want the control. We want you to have the control of how this goes. You have the knowledge. So you can make your business the very best it can be. And then if you want to get investors, you want to sell it, you're doing the right things. And people aren't saying, well, actually, it's not worth anything because of X, Y, Z.
It's interesting, it segues quite nicely into my next question about how important is trust in the solution you're delivering. Because, of course, from a legal standpoint, if you're building a relationship with your clients to enable them to basically bring legal into their solution, it creates trust in, obviously I'll let you answer the question, but trust from the point of view of trust for your investors that you are where you are going, there will be IP protection and therefore value. But trust to who you're providing towards, as in your consumers and potentially another third party suppliers. Trust of what is that journey? What is that destination? Because I've had speakers before that have, they get to the solution very quickly. They sell the business, therefore, and that's the end of. They move on to something else because disruptors are entrepreneurs, and that's what happens, and that's fine today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, trust. I mean, it sort of underpins everything. I mean, in a way, it's sort of the old-fashioned sort of. You had your lawyer and you stuck with them forever, because there's a lot of information out there. But what you really need in terms of, you need to really partner with someone who can, go on the journey with you and is interested with you. So, yeah, I mean, trust is absolutely fundamental, that you're getting good advice. You've got people that are interested in your business, want to see you succeed. It's much, much more than your traditional, oh, I need this done, do it, and then we'll, that may be the end of it. It's a total interest in it. And I think that's how you build trust. We also spend a lot of time getting to know a business before we do anything at all, because we have to work out what's exactly right. To do a plan, you can have a plan and you can go off and decide to do it or not. But it's very, very important to build trust before you start, because often you think, oh, I know what this is going to be. Oh, it's going to be one of those, but you've got to listen, really, because there's often like real nuggets in there, and real points of difference that's making you think a different path, maybe the right one to go. And this is ever evolving in the world of tech. Obviously, we'll come back to that on the scale question. But Annette, you were really keen when we talked before the show about this question. This is kind of like the fundamental question that you want to answer.
Yeah, the trust topic is obviously huge. I mean, diet and what you, ultimately put into your own body is one of the most intimate and most personal decisions for people. And
my body is my temple.
Exactly, right, exactly. I mean,
Not mine.
that's what, and that sort of really goes against the current trend of being told by everyone everywhere what you should or shouldn't be eating.
Yeah.
It's, for me, I think when this whole thing started, my fundamental problem was that I had started to, I was made aware of there being these environmental issues, but I wanted to now explore and learn. And I didn't want to be told what the answer was. I didn't, I didn't like the websites that made me, that sort of gave me this whole preaching, like, you should go vegan, you need to go vegan, you have to go vegan. I wasn't ready for that. And then actually it can have the opposite effect. Like, it actually pushes you away from it. And so I felt that I needed an inclusive space that allows me to educate myself, and that is much more open to a lot of different approaches. Because ultimately, I mean, if you look at this as a big sort of, the problem at a very high level, I mean, reducing our meat consumption it's great if a lot of people are happy to go completely plant-based, but it does make a big difference if the entire population eats 20 or 30% less meat. And so there is sort of this in-between space. And so I think that is like the trust that the platform you're using, the tool you're using, is not going to be trying to push you to a place where you don't want to be.
Yeah.
But then the other bit is which is equally important, is at a very sort of practical level. I mean, if you get to a restaurant and you've been sent there by a tool or by an influencer and you don't like it, you're not going to use that tool again, or you're not going to follow that influencer any longer. So you kind of also need to find a place where you feel that that's relevant to you. And so what we were like, what More Than Carrots really aims to do is not so much give our opinion. It's not about telling people this is what you should be doing or this is where you should be eating. It's more we do the analysis for you, so that you don't have to spend those 14, 15 minutes researching menus every single time you want to go eat. But we give you all the information in a very accessible way, and essentially enable you to make your own decision and find the relevant information to do that.
Yeah. And Louise, PlanSnap.
I mean, trust is everything. When you're talking about trying a radically new way of getting people together, just a new app, the first thing that I think we think these days, at least in the technology industry or people who are early adopters, is, what is this platform going to do with my data? How are you storing it? What are you using it for? Are you going to tell me other things? If I want to delete my account, how do I do that? Right from the get-go, we have to get people to trust us. We don't collect anything more than we actually need, and then obviously we explain to people how we use it. And that has huge implications for how we develop our machine learning models, because the concept of black box AI, where we'll give you a great answer, we just won't tell you how you got there, applies to both the company but also the user. It's very interesting designing for machine learning assisted planning, because you have to explain to people why you have that and why it's useful to that person. And that process for us introducing recommendations from us as an entity, it has been fascinating. And then
because you don't have to be on PlanSnap to be part of the conversation, do you?
No, so that's the second part, is that the people who, our goal is to be across any platform, integrated wherever you start planning. You might never actually touch the PlanSnap app, but you'll use our service in the background. And so whilst we've gained the trust of the first person who says, hey, I've got this idea, I'm going to get some friends together, the 4, 5, 6, 10, 20, however many people that receive that invitation also have to trust us without having gone through the same kind of onboarding process as their friend has. So there's two really fundamental elements.
But do they have to download the app, everybody that's invited?
No, I mean, they'll have better experience if they do, but you can use the entire thing on the web. Yeah.
So you could actually, even in a work environment, for example, I'm pulling together, I mean, there's lots of companies now that sort of do innovation within innovation on your own time, because they've worked out the best innovation actually happens from different mindsets. So you pull in a group of scientists and marketeers and brand people and whatever, different people. So your app could be used in a workspace to actually say, hey guys, we're going to get together and have a meeting over lunch. Do you want to join us? We're talking about X topic. Yep. Introverts coming alive and blogging. Whatever it is. So that's different ways of it happening. And then you say, how do I know that, okay, I've used it, I've trusted it, I've not downloaded it. How do I get enticed onto it to get what is the better journey for me?
If you have a good experience with your first plan that's made on PlanSnap, one that you didn't start, then that is essentially one of the markers of trust, is that somebody who typically does more planning than you has chosen this thing, done the research, the plan has worked, and then that is then the kind of the start of the journey to then start making your own plans. And that's actually the majority of what's driving our growth at the minute is from people who've been invited to plans. We do very little marketing at all, but yes, Monday this week we were featured as Apple's App of the Day.
Brilliant,
So,
congratulations.
yeah, it's a
because
big
you
achievement.
conceived the idea, you launched, in fact, obviously fairly recently, but you actually conceived and launched or started the company in 2016. And I don't think back then we saw the power of the influencer market, but actually you are in the influencer market, aren't you? Very much your own users.
Yeah, and my background is actually influencer marketing as well.
Oh, is it?
But before influencers came big, I was working on some of the first projects for how to use influencers at scale and how influential they can be. But I think the two fastest growing areas of marketing at the minute are experiential marketing, so brand experiences that brands actually host, although that kind of also includes sponsorship and that kind of thing, because people don't want to be, just see an ad. They want to actually experience the brand in a different way and get value from that. And then influencer marketing. So we're actually a B2B platform, and we take those two things, experiential marketing and influencer marketing, combine them. So you can actually use our platform to make plans with influencers so that they feel like friends. And then when you go there, the power that a word of recommendation marketing for a product has is actually given to that with a fraction of the cost.
Of course,
So,
which segues perfectly. In fact, you've almost answered the next question of validation. How do you validate your idea? Because of course, I think at early days on influencers, we didn't necessarily see the diversion of above the line advertising spend from a brand perspective into influencer. Now I'd say it's an economy, yeah. So, is that is the influencer take up of your app, is that the validation, or did something else validate your idea?
We had paying customers before we had a product, and I would say the first validation was, you need different bits of validation at different stages of the business. So the first one is, can it be a business? Sale before product. Okay, yes, okay, we validated that. And the second thing was we did crowdfunding. So we went for £250,000 in investment, and we got £380,000, I think.
Wow.
And that was really, is there a big enough market for this? Are people prepared to put their money behind their...
When was this?
This
raise?
was last year, the middle of last year.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's the second part. And then I guess with the app of the day stuff, and we were also featured as the best app for socializing by Google before Christmas. And so that's kind of another validation. So, you look for different points of validation at different stages of the business.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we'll talk about growth later on, but for validation idea, obviously you're in a different stage. You've just launched today, this week. Fantastic. And you're looking for your next, you've done a raise previously, you're looking for your next raise. So anybody out there that wants to listen to this point in particular, because you're now going to share with you how you validated your idea.
Yeah, so for us, it's obviously an ongoing conversation. We interview, we observe a lot, and it's something that involves really the whole market. So we have a lot of conversations with diners, but we also have the conversation with the restaurants. We see that there is a lot of, I think one of the most interesting things for us has been the realization how many entrepreneurs are sort of trying to solve this problem. There's so many people that are trying to build a dish-based search app for restaurants. There are a lot of things that we keep seeing, and none of them have really caught on. It's this group of meat reducers is a tricky one in the sense that it's huge, but it doesn't identify, like we don't identify it as much with our eating habits as a vegan or vegetarian does, right? Yeah. And so we have obviously a lot of validation for the problem. For the solution itself, this is actually, I gave a bit of a background story, but I think this is iteration number 5 or 6. And so everyone has obviously been developed based on the feedback we got on the previous one.
Yeah.
And so they have been, I would describe it as we're like sort of still circling, but like the circles are getting smaller and we're sort of like narrowing in on something. And then that is sort of where we are. So, really the proof is in the pudding. We'll see. The app is literally live this week. So we hope that, a lot of people are going to download it and give us feedback.
But it's certainly newsworthy at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, your validation, you've been around for quite some time.
Yeah.
It's been 15, 17 years.
Exactly.
But what I see that's very interesting is the fact that you're jumping on this tech, this market that really needs it, because like you say at the very beginning, they don't have the budget.
Yeah.
But they need to create the value.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. Now, can I because we're short on time, guys, so can I just ask you to give me the validation and the scale and what you're looking at in the immediate future in one answer?
Yeah, well, validation is the last job you do, that's what you're going on. You're constantly being validated. It's very different to Annette and Louise because we're not doing something that hasn't been done before. We're just doing something in a completely different way. So really our validation comes from every time you finish a job, if it was well done, that's it, and you have to keep it up. It's a very different thing. In terms of the tech, in our industry, there's a lot of information out there. It's how to use tech in a clever way to help people get to the answer. I don't think it will ever take away the need for face-to-face, because I think what people really like is to be able to say, yeah, I know all these things, but I really want to know for me, and it's quite hard to do that in tech. We can look for solutions, but it's quite hard to condense that knowledge. So you've got like a robotic advisor, but things are going to be possible because even judges now, they're saying that you can be looking at all the cases and you can get a robotic judgment. So if you can get a robotic judgment, robotic lawyers have got to be the next thing.
Yeah, well, I know 2 companies already out there that are already using algorithms to replace lawyers because it's an interesting sector, isn't it? Very. They're the last to do anything or to move or, a bit like politicians. But anyway, so very quickly, you guys, we're going to have to bring those 2 questions together. So it's about scale and what changes you invest in the future. Now, we know for you that, we need investment. So guys out there, we want investment for More Than Carrots to help mind shift the world into eating less meat. What's your how are you going to scale your business?
Also, the app we have right now is focused on London. I mean, the obvious scale for us is geographically. We really want to roll this out. London is arguably one of the better cities for vegetarian and vegan food. So there are cities where this would be even more relevant. So that's what we want to do. I mean, what we've built now is an app that uses it's a completely new way of looking at restaurants. It's a disruptive way of not saying I will have something for vegans or vegetarians, but more how can my menu reflect the needs of our future food reality, really, and how can I have a menu that really gets anyone to enjoy the vegetarian options. So to scale, it's an analysis that will always, we will build on reviews. We will be working with users to scale this, and what we needed to do is really give our method, really push this into the market and validate that with this app. And so we've just sort of taken that plunge and just sort of doing all the analysis at the moment ourselves. And then ultimately there will be some way of user-generated content that helps us scale. And then for the next step, I mean, so iPhone app literally out this week. So that was the big thing. I mean, next will definitely be an Android app as well, because we just want to reach as many people as we can. And get the feedback, keep growing, and we need. So
the goal
funding.
is, from a dev point of view, a little bit like Facebook, where we can actually globally build the content.
Essentially, I mean, it's the method is the same, and it is really analysis. You don't have to go to the restaurant to give feedback. It will obviously be great to add reviews to that from people that have been, but it's really about looking at restaurants in this new way. And there is a huge opportunity to involve people and scale this up. So if anyone wants to launch it in a new city other than London, also very welcome. Reach out to us.
Brilliant.
So morethancarrots.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you. And finally, Louise.
How am I going to scale the business?
So and future investment in one.
So geographically is another obvious one for us. I think the States represents a great market for us. Lots of the big successful consumer tech platforms come from there. Although I would say that actually London has this unique dynamic between machine learning talent, design, and cheap technology, which means that we can actually develop something. We should, and we've got the investment ecosystem now, so we don't necessarily have to move to America to be the next, the global go-to way to get people together. So geographically is one, but the next thing for us really is moving to new platforms. So we started with an iPhone app, we moved to the Android app, we then moved to the web, and then the next step for us is to be inside all of the other apps and services that you use when making social plans. So whether that's looking at a restaurant review or whether it's on a theatre website, to be able to dynamically generate personalised plans from external pieces of content, that's
So
where
the
we're going
open
next.
APIs and everyone make sure they're easy to actually adapt and dev and work with.
Absolutely, and that's what we're raising investment for now.
Transparency and collaboration is the only way forward. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to have to wrap up because we are really tight on time. But thank you very much for being very vocal, being very transparent on your business models and the future. You heard it here on Rip It Up, Start Again. Look forward to the next episode.